Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be showing you how I remove my current golf grips without ripping them so that we can save them and use them on another club. So for the method I'm going to be showing you today, I'm going to be using a rod like this, which probably the best place to find this on is off TEMU for around £10 at the moment. I did see it not long ago for about £4.50, but it definitely beats that back in the day before TEMU existed. The only place you could really find it was like from a proper golf club building website, where I ended up actually paying about £45 for this. And depending on how many grips you're doing, if you're doing a full set, is probably worth doing it, especially if they are quite new grips still. Now this one I'm taking off is a brand new grip. You can pretty much get any sort of grip off using this method, apart from the ones that used to like stick to the shaft. Or maybe older corded ones like this, which are quite worn, you'd probably struggle taking these off using the rod method. There wouldn't really be many cases where you'd want to take that off unless you're extending them or something, but even then I think it would still be worth putting new grips on. And if you're not wanting to pay the full price, even looking at like some fake ones or something, probably better than something like this. Your multi-compounds like this are a bit more difficult than other ones like these, for example, with certain super strokes being a bit more difficult too, but for the most part they're not too bad. Also depends what type of tape has been used, like some might stick to the grip a bit more than others, and ones like these CPX grips are probably the easiest ones that you'll find to take off, but for the most part it's never really too difficult. Now on top of using a rod like that, you'll also need some white spirit or something similar to this. I show this in quite a few videos because it's something that you use quite a lot. You can get proper grip solution which doesn't smell half as bad as white spirit. That's kind of the main difference. This works just as well as grip solution, if not a bit better, but ideally you do want to be using that in quite a well ventilated area, so outside is probably your best bet for using this. Also having a towel on hand is definitely going to be beneficial. I'm actually using this in a vise just for the video purpose. It's definitely going to be easier doing it freehand this. If you're standing up and resting it on the floor, that's probably the best and easiest way to do it. But yeah, it's actually quite a straightforward process doing this. So to start with, just peel back the end part and you get a pretty good idea straight away of how easy this is going to be to take off. Like I say, these are quite straightforward most of the time. So once you've rolled a bit back, you can go ahead and shove the rod into the end of it slightly and see how far down you can get. Now with older grips and certain ones, maybe ones that are a bit thinner, you do need to be careful that you don't rip through the grip, which is quite easy done sometimes depending on the grip and grip age. So don't try and force it down too much, like you'll be able to see how far down it will get before it gets stuck. And this looks like about there is going to be its limit. So once you've got that in, you can take white spirit and just pour a bit down the side of the rod in there, or basically in between the rod and the shaft if you can. I'm actually going to take this out of the vise because it is just so much easier doing it freehand rather than having it locked into a vise. Before I put that in as well, you do find on these rods that they do have like a notch at the top, and I find it better to do it that way as it doesn't stretch the grip as much as if you were to do it that way round. You see, it's just going to stretch the grip out a bit more, and obviously you don't really want that when you put it back onto another club or even back on the same one. I mean, you can do it both ways really, it doesn't make too much of a difference, but if anything I prefer just to do it that way around. Like I say, I'm just going to pour some spirit in between the grip and the shaft, or sorry, the rod and the shaft. Don't need a lot to start with. I mean, you don't really need a lot at all most of the time. Once that's gone in, you should be able to work the rod down a bit further. See that going down pretty much halfway there, and you can start to work it round as well just to get the spirit completed all the way around the shaft and all the way around the grip to get it unstuck basically, and just see how far down the grip you can go. Again, if it does start to get stuck or you feel some sort of resistance, then don't try and force it. If you do feel it getting stuck, then just add a bit more solution in there. Just let that work down to the bottom, and then again you can just start to go all the way around the shaft and see how far down you can push it. What I will say with certain grips, like especially super stroke or putter grips, if you're trying to work it round the shaft like all the way round and you feel it sort of being quite difficult and getting stuck, then I wouldn't really recommend it too much, like trying to force it round. So basically if you're trying to force it too much, you find that you can actually bend it, and you see how that's not lined up properly. I mean, it won't actually look that bad when it's back on a shaft, but it's just not perfect. And basically if you have something that isn't as easy as something like this to turn all the way around, you can just pull it out pretty much from the start. So if you go down it, see how far you can get, pull it out, turn it at the top, and then put it down again, and just do that all the way around rather than actually spinning it around when it's inside the grip, if that makes sense. So you're still getting the spirit all the way down the grip, and it's getting it unstuck at the same time. It just doesn't mean that it's going to stretch it and get it out of place slightly. But yeah, basically just use as much spirit as you need to use to be able to get right down to the bottom. you're probably going to waste a bit. I mean, you could do this over a bucket if you did want to save it, but you're never really going to have to use too much, so it's not like a massive waste if you don't collect it. Basically, when you get right down to the bottom, I'm using a towel just so I don't get my hand too wet, because white spirit does sting your hands a bit if you do get it in the nuts and crannies. And then once you get the rod all the way to the end and you're pretty sure that it's gone all the way round, all the way up and down, you should be able to just slide it off like so. You see that there's not actually any tape left on the shaft there at all, so that's all come out inside of the grip pretty much. But yeah, that's how easy it was to remove. I mean, they only take a couple of seconds. Like, I barely ever cut grips anymore. I pretty much just rod them off every time I can. The only thing we're doing it this way, if you have tape on it, it's sometimes a bit more difficult to remove the tape if it's wet. And if you're wanting to put a grip on, like if you're doing it for somebody else straight away after, then it is a bit more difficult to try and get the shaft dry and ready to add the new tape, as even if it doesn't seem like it's wet, it is still difficult to get the tape to stay on there. So let me just show you what I mean. Let me just put it back into the vise. Should have said really before, and I should have done it myself, it's probably better wearing gloves for doing this because your hands do get quite wet sometimes. Basically, I'm just going to dry off the shaft as best I can using this towel. So that to me just seems like it's really dry. Like when you hand down, it doesn't feel wet at all. There's a bit of grease there, but it's not feeling wet. Then if I take my double-sided tape, I mean, this is probably just going to stick straight to it now. Yeah, to be fair, that has actually stuck straight on, which is just typical. Normally, you'd find that it doesn't stick to it at all. But I mean, normally you'd find that the tape is still on there rather than being stuck inside the grip. I think it's just because it's like a brand new grip, or possibly just the type of tape that they've used. But if you do find that it doesn't stick down, then just give it as much of a dry down with a towel and kitchen roll and stuff as you can. And you do find it easier sticking when you take the back off. So like if this was sliding off, which it normally does, take the backing off first and then put it on. Like for whatever reason, I don't know, it just makes it easier to stick into place when the backing's not on it and it is still feeling slightly wet, or it's just not sticking to the shaft properly. Yeah, I'm actually really surprised at how well that stuck on. Like, it doesn't normally stick on that well straight away, I'll be honest. Or I mean, in some cases, if the grip's quite new, like brand new, like this one was, and the tape was still stuck to it, you could just leave it there and slide the new one on in a lot of cases. I've done that a few times and it's never been an issue. It always sticks to it. Like, the tape's not actually the reason why the grip sticks onto the shafts. If you're low on tape or you don't have a lot to use, that is something that you can keep in mind. Anyway, when you're left with your grip that you've taken off, if you do want to just give that a clean, you can find something like this, which is a grip cleaner, which you can pick up from a few places. I've not checked on TEMU, but I'm guessing you probably find one on there again. Now this does need a bit of a clean. As you can see, I've been using that quite a lot recently. Just a bit of white spirit should clean that off, so that's something I need to do. Basically, when you're cleaning it, you just dip that into some white spirit, and then you can just clean out the inside of your grip and just work it all the way down. Again, some will be worse than others. You should find it will bring out all the tape with it. And you can see how much tape that's just fetched out. Like, that has just done the job in about a couple of seconds. I mean, if you didn't want to spend 20 quid maybe, or whatever this was, I forget how much I paid for this, then there is other alternatives which you can kind of use to get the tape out of it. In some cases you could probably even turn it inside out all the way down, which I have done, but it's quite time consuming and it does depend on what grip you've got. Or I mean, even using just like a screwdriver or something does take a while to do, but it can still do the job just as well, really. Just if you leave too much of it in there, you will feel the bumps and bits of tape in there when you do slide it back on. As long as you get the majority of it out, it shouldn't be too much of an issue. So yeah, just something to keep in mind when you do place that back onto another club or onto the same one. But yeah, that is basically all you have to do to remove your golf grip from the shaft without cutting it. If you found the video helpful, then feel free to leave a like on the video. Subscribe if you want to see more videos like this, like DIY club repairs. And yeah, as usual, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in another video.